Okay, so this is dream number 2. This one was not as detailed, but I woke up with a knowing, and the premise of the dream shifted a little bit during the dream, so it might get a little confusing, but this seemed to be the most important one. In the dream, I was having a baby, and I was trying to buy baby food using coupons because I couldn't afford to have food for this child. And in my dream, there were new rules that were set in place. They are not rules that we have now. So it was like I went to go and use a coupon, and it was for 39 cents. And it was, if you bought 5 jars of food, then you could get 39 cents off. But the thing is you couldn't buy it on credit. You were only allowed to pay for it in cash. And if you paid for it in some kind of credit, like almost like it was a weird kind of credit system. It was almost like old school where they would write it down in a book. But if you did, then you couldn't use the coupon. And so credit was cost you way more to do that. And only people who could pay for it in cash could have credit. And so, and it reminded me of like old school credit things where when we were first getting started and we had a secured credit card where you had to secure your credit first. And in my dream, I was very upset and panicking because I wasn't going to be allowed to send my child to school. I was very sad because my child was going to end up being a servant to people who had a lot of money because only they could buy clothing, only they could buy the food, only they could buy the housing, and only they could pay for schooling. And that anybody who did not have tremendous amounts of cash in their account, only they were allowed to actually live a normal human life. Everybody else ended up being servants because they had to, because they weren't allowed to buy anything with the money that they made working. And they were paid less and less money working. And in my dream, I shifted things. So my daughter's about to graduate from dental school in real life. And in my dream, I was trying to find a way to transfer this baby that I was going to have to her so that she could have this child because she was able to be educated before this came into existence. And she was able to come up with the money to become an actual living human being, not this servant human being. And I wanted my daughter to have this baby that I was supposed to be having because she would be able to buy it. Not buy it, but pay for it. And that was my only chance of providing a life for my child was to have my daughter raise it as hers because then she could buy the baby food and she could buy the clothing. Now, when I say you couldn't afford the clothing, you literally weren't allowed to buy clothing. Like, you weren't. The only clothing people could have was what was given to them by this wealthy society. And they weren't allowed to have school because only the wealthy people were allowed to have school. And they weren't allowed to own a property. In my dream, I lived in this, it was like almost like a group home because I couldn't have my house anymore because my credit had been taken away. And I wasn't able to pay back my mortgage all in one lump sum with what I had in my savings account. So I lost my house to people who could buy it outright. And this was a very emotional dream. I woke up to this, and it was almost like I had this flood of knowing that this is exactly what they're trying to do. They're trying to get rid of the education system so that only the wealthy can be educated. They want to get rid of financial aid because only the wealthy should be going to college. They want to eliminate food protection and housing protection because they feel that only the wealthy should have those luxuries. And if they eliminate the credit and if they eliminate these things that make it easier for all of us to be able to become these independent and self-sufficient adults and humans and people in this country, if they can get rid of all these things, then they become gods and they can do whatever the hell they want, and the rest of us become servants, because there's no way we can ever get out of those trenches. And that is part of their plan. That is 100% part of their plan. And I think there's a lot of them. I think it's not just the 1%. There are a lot of wealthy people who believe this. They want to get rid of the financial aid and educational system because of this. That's why they're getting rid of these aids. That's why they're getting rid of these job security type things. That's why they're getting rid of all of this, is because if they do, they don't have to pay for you. They don't want to pay for that. And you could be working for them for free. For them. It's free for them. This was what I woke up to this morning. And I was terrified. And then the cost of the baby food was 39 cents. And the coupon, the other thing, part of the coupon was, I was trying to save up coupons. I was trying to stockpile them. Because I figured before I had this baby, I could buy jars of baby food in advance in preparation for this. And even if I just bought a couple of jars at a time, I would be able to put them aside and have enough for this difficult time. And I was told no, that after the first use of the coupon, their computer system recognized that I had already used one coupon, and there were no coupons after that. I wasn't allowed to. So this was a very, very vivid, very real dream with real numbers, real colors, real themes, and I woke up with a knowing. That's important. That's important. Pay attention. Wake up. Also, one more thing I wanted to add. I did pause it for a second. I did want to add this. Think about this. Think about this in your life. If they were to take over the banking industry and the banking systems, and if all of a sudden today the only thing you were allowed to have and keep are the things that you had paid for in full, and only live off the cash in your account, how would you be doing? I'd lose my home. I would lose my home. And that's scary. That's scary. And for me, that's simple. That's because I'm neurotically trying to pay down all my credit cards and things like that. As soon as I use them, I pay them down. And I do that because my husband had been laid off multiple times, and I just don't want to get buried. But how would you do if you had more than one credit card? If you had student loans and they took that education away from you because you didn't pay for it up front? What if everything that you hadn't paid back was instantly taken away from you? How many cars would you lose? How about medical? If you owed medical debt and they said that you weren't allowed to live because you owed medical debt, or they took away your education because you had student loans, or they took away your home because you had a mortgage on it, or your car payment, or credit cards, and they came in and they took everything away because you still owed money on it and that credit system no longer existed. It's a far-fetched idea. I get it. But when people have enough money to pay off their debt, and they look down on you, and you're living a different kind of life than they are. Imagine that, though.